Welcome to Access Zen with Gregory Foster. Our program will help you set a more perfect balance between your inner world and the outside world. And now, here's your host, Gregory Foster.
And good morning, everyone. This is Gregory Foster, and you're listening to Access Zen here on a nice, quiet Thursday morning. How's everyone doing out there today? Hey, so just wrapping up from our show from last week, and don't forget to go out to our website and check out. It was a really great show. Thank you for having us on last week. However, this week we've got just an incredible show. We've got two just wonderful guests. First one we'll lead off with Dr. Donna Yerman, and she's going to walk us through what is real happiness. And so the theme of our show today, achieving happiness, health, and optimal performance in our lives today. And so Dr. Donna is going to kind of kick off the show and kind of take us on the inside out. And then as we transition in, we're going to have our second guest, Dr. Vodon, who's going to take us through basically the physical level, how we take care of ourselves from a supplemental perspective, from a nutritional perspective, and from a structural perspective. And let's face it, we're all kind of in a pretty fast-paced world, as we talked about last week. And so this show, Access In, is all about how can we harness all of the wonderful things that are available to us in this world to help us stay balanced, stay focused, and come into alignment so we can be at our optimal best. And so Dr. Vicky, who will come on in the second segment, she has taken care of some of the greatest athletes in the world, from FloJo to Kersey Joyner, all kinds of wonderful athletes in track and field that she has taken care of. Our first guest today, however, is Dr. Donna Yerman. Donna, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. How was your drive last night?
It was wonderful. The weather is so changeable now. It's wonderful.
It's that time of year, isn't it?
Yes.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you joining the show, and thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to be. I am so appreciative of the opportunity to share with people work about happiness and how to really bring that into your life and live it and love more. So I'm always excited about sharing.
Well, you can't ever get enough happiness. So I got to ask you the question, because as you and I have been talking the last couple of days, what is real happiness?
Real happiness is when the happiness is coming from inside. So when you love to really love and accept yourself unconditionally, then you start to really know what happiness is inside. And that allows us to really all of us to come into our power and create the things we want in life, because we're living from the inside and from what's really true inside, not really worrying too much about what other people are wanting us to do, what society wants us to do. It's really finding that place inside. And that's what this work is all about.
Wow. Well, that sounds just terrific. That just really sounds great. So before we get into that a little bit, and I'd like definitely to help walk our listeners through how we go about finding that on the inside, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got to this place?
Great. Thank you. I was a doctor, healer, chiropractor for many years, and I had a practice I really enjoyed, and it was wonderful, and people were getting well, and I really became the doctor I wanted to go see. And what happened was I started to realize that there was more underneath. There was more to learn. There was more to help people find what was true for them. So I saw a lot of people that had a lot of things, but they weren't necessarily happy. They would get out of pain, but there was more in life. And so I started my quest to find that for myself, and then to be able to share it. And I looked everywhere. I traveled around many places in the world looking for what was going to really help me find it. And when I had read Paul Ferrini's book, Love Without Conditions, and I loved it, but I didn't know how to live it. And when I saw the work of the roadmap and the Real Happiness work and this roadmap of how to find it, I was astounded. And that started my journey going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I knew that this was work I wanted to share with people.
Wow, that's fantastic. So tell us more about this journey.
Well,
what kind of clients were you working with, and tell us a little bit about that.
I was working in L.A. On Wilshire Boulevard, and I had a wonderful clientele. People who really were into health, wanted to be healthier, as well as wanted to get out of pain. And what I found was that pain was a symptom of what was happening, as we all know, but it went deeper than I thought. And I realized that all of the problems that people were coming in with really had a basis deeper inside. And so I worked on a lot of people, like people who were in the industry, people who were in soap operas, some athletes. I had a real variety of people. But the thing that goes through it all is that we all want more. We all want to be happy, not just the cars and the houses and the stuff. It's really about having a quality of life.
A quality of life, yes. And I, obviously living in LA myself, I see a lot of this as well, in my community, and having been up in Hollywood as well. It's fascinating to see people who are really successful on the outside, and yet no matter how much they achieve, they just can't seem to quite get that peace inside. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. And it's possible. And what's so exciting for me is that there's a simple process to get it. People
Tell us more.
Who are doing this work. I mean, there's lots of ways to get there for everyone.
Right.
What I find is that the people who are doing this work are finding it. They're really discovering how to fulfill themselves and their life purpose, coming into power, having relationships that really work, not trying to find someone who just fills the parts that aren't you. They're coming into their power as a whole person and coming into relationships as a full being. And then the dysfunctions and the pain and all that start to resolve themselves because it's coming from the inside. I think the whole thing is about loving ourselves unconditionally. And, I mean, that sounds easy to say and not quite so easy to do.
So you've worked with some very successful people. Have you, so in the work that you do you work with that level of folks, or do you work with, everyday corporate people? What's your target market?
We work with a wide variety of people. We work with people who have gotten everything that they've ever wanted and found they weren't happy and looked to this work. I work with people who are going from paycheck to paycheck or meal to meal. It's not their financial level. It's the desire to really find that love, that unconditional love inside for themselves first, and then they can transfer that to others. So it really works in a large group. And I have some young people, but I find that a lot of the people that come are people who have been around the block, so to say, and have done a lot of spiritual studies and found that they found bits and pieces, but they didn't really find the way inside to really come from inside to find it. And that's what we do. We don't teach. We facilitate people to find what's true for them inside.
So can you give our listeners maybe like a little example of if they obviously maybe what you're saying resonates within themselves. How do you help mentor them or help develop them to find, how do they know they're finding that peace inside? I guess, there's a lot of people out there today telling folks how to find that. What would you say is your approach? What's your methodology?
Paul Ferrini has written 30 books.
Yes, wonderful author.
All about this. So people find that they start to read the books, and then often they'll come to a intensive. Like, I'm doing one in March where people can come to just the first phase, or they can come to all three phases. And what happens is there's a lot of work. It's all experiential, and it's a lot of work with finding it within themselves. So I may give some direction on how to start looking, but people actually go in and start to look at what is it that started all this, and holding themselves gently, holding themselves in a gentle place where. But the most important part of this work is to hold yourself and connect to love inside of you. And that's what I teach.
Wow, that's great.
And it's amazing. People always go, how do I do that? And by the time that we're done with these intensives, they know how to do that. And then it's a practice.
That's some wonderful stuff, Donna. And I would like to share something anecdotally, because I recall, 5 or 6 years ago, I really wouldn't have had any idea what you were talking about. And I went to a similar type of seminar, not through Paul Ferrini, but through a different organization. And there was one exercise, and maybe this resonates with you, that they asked us to do to find what unconditional love was. And they asked us to visualize someone in our life, whether it was a pet or a son, a daughter, a loved one, something that just really brought them that extra joy, and to visualize that person in their life, close their eyes and visualize that, and just feel what it feels like on the inside. And what I felt was actually believe it or not, was my pet, my cat Bubbles, and I visualized him on my lap, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of joy and love. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I love that. Yes. Yeah, because what you're doing is allowing yourself to fully accept and fully be in the moment. And of course, that's all there is to be loving yourself in the moment. So every day, I ask myself if I'm loving myself. And that's a wonderful way to find that, and to open up to what really opens your heart, what really allows you to be there. And then it's a practice to learn how to stay there. And, we're going to move back and forth, but if you're not being in that place of loving, when you're feeling that and then you realize you're not to beat yourself up, but to allow yourself to open to it again.
Wonderful. Donna, we're going to be going to a break in a moment. When we come back, I want to hear more about Paul Ferrini and his work and how that's inspired you. This is really great stuff, and also tell folks how they can get a part of this and learn how to find that loving inside. You're listening to Gregory Foster, and this is Access Zen.
And now, let's return to Access Zen.
And we're back live, and this is Gregory Foster, and you're listening to Access Zen, and we're having a wonderful conversation here with Dr. Donna. So I think, Dr. Donna, you were going to share with us a little more about who is Paul Ferrini and how has he inspired your work, and then I think you're going to tell us about how our listeners could become involved in the program.
Great. Very well, thank you. Paul Ferrini has been writing and studying for years and years, and has written over 30 books, and every single one of them approaches life in terms of love and unconditional love. And he does it in a very clear and intelligent way. And so he's very grounded in the work he does, and it comes through. And when I go back and I read the books, they're all in alignment with this work. And this real happiness work is a culmination of all of that. He gives retreats and teaches all over the world. He does retreats in Florida, and in Germany, And I do the workshops and intensives in California. And he's actually having a retreat in a beautiful place in Florida. And when you go, it's an experience of being with yourself, learning to love yourself more, and to then therefore love others more.
What's the cost of the seminar?
Oh.
Did I catch you off guard with that one?
You know what? The way you find that out is you go on the website, paulferrini.com, and there's a phone number to find out. It's 413-774-9474.
Wonderful. Great. Well, this has been a pleasure, Dr. Donna. I'd love to have you back on the show again. Maybe you could bring Paul with you next time.
Oh, that'd be great. You know, I would like to mention people come from all over the world to come to them. And so it's a very interesting time, and it's at a wonderful retreat center that allows people to really go inside in a protected, wonderful way. If you do go on paulferrini.com and go under workshops and scroll down, you'll see the retreat center, and you'll see, you know, what the seminars and the workshops are about, and it'll give you a real understanding of the work. So again, if you have specific questions, the number is 413-774-9474. And if you'd like to talk to me direct, they'll give you my number.
That's wonderful. And that's Dr. Donna Yerman.
Yes.
That's great. So also, listeners, if you go out to the AccessN webpage, look under guests, she's got all of the information she just told you about there. You can click on her website, and that'll take you to everything. And I encourage, you know, all of our listeners to really, you know, internalize that finding that love and peace within will help you deal with all of the challenges that life is coming at you from outside. You're not going to find that love and happiness on the outside, but I can tell you this, it will definitely ground you from the inside out. Does that sound pretty good, Donna?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Greg.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you, and you have yourself a wonderful day. You're welcome to stay on, or you can go about your day. Now, I know you had a long drive last night.
Okay, thank you.
You take care now.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. So, joining us in just a few moments here is going to be a wonderful person here local, Dr. Vicki Vodon, and I would describe her as a chiropractor, nutritionist extraordinaire. She has just an incredible background working with the Summer Olympics. Specifically, she's going to tell you about the work she's done with the women's track and field, and she's worked with some of the greatest and most amazing athletes you've ever heard of. And she has an incredible approach that she has, you know, obviously worked and developed with the athletes, and now she's taking it to everyone else. So basically, how to become your optimal best in every situation that life can throw you. So she's going to be coming on here in just maybe about 30 seconds. But I wanted to just again tell you, my name is Gregory Foster, and you're listening to AccessN. Dr. Vicki, are you on with us?
I am indeed. How are you this morning, Greg?
Good morning, and how are you? I'm doing fantastic.
Well, I woke up, I think, around 4 o'clock this morning.
You and me both.
Yeah, we start the old routine, you know. It's a necessity.
The earlier you can get started, the better, right?
Well, you know, they say early to bed, early to rise.
Early to bed, early to rise.
Makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome.
So, where are we going this morning, Greg?
Well, you know, one of the things I've learned from you is a very holistic approach. And just so our listeners know, a lot of the folks that I'll be sharing with you on our show are folks that I've actually worked with, who have, you know, helped me, helped my friends, helped business associates. And so probably 3 or 4 months ago, through a series of circumstances, actually my wife had gotten into a fairly, you know, significant accident, and we were able to get a referral from a close friend. And so she brought me in with her, and Dr. Vicki took a look at me, and we used something that she calls, what do you call it, LSA?
Limbic stress assessment, yes.
Limbic stress assessment, and I'll let you tell the listeners all about that. What I got from you is it's not just about taking care of me from a structural perspective, but you seem to be really concerned about me from a nutritional perspective, a supplemental perspective, and you even have this incredible meditative quality about you that really helps bring out, as Dr. Donna was just talking about, from the inside out. So I would love for you to first tell us about who you are, what your practice is, and your wonderful story of how you work with some of the greatest athletes in the world, especially some of the stories you were telling me yesterday from the 1984 Olympics, and then how you are working with folks like me on the supplemental, nutritional, and structural level. So I'll turn this over to you, but our listeners are very eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. The things that you've just asked me are multiple-fold, and it's a little bit difficult to know where to start.
The beginning's always a good place. So just tell us about yourself and
oh my goodness, well,
what your inspirations are.
There's been some very fundamental inspirations in my life. I think that it started with my roots, where I grew up and was raised, and it was in a farm environment, and very holistic at that time as well. We had our own garden and kind of like lived almost off the grid. I had our own well water and raised our chickens and, the whole thing, back to the farm. And I think that's where you get a lot of your grassroots values and integrity, is to work with the land and with the animals. And not only did I have that as my roots, but also my mother was a really classical person in the classical arts of music, so I got a great classical music background, and I actually was aspiring initially to be a musician before I became interested in the health field. And, as life draws you here and there with its reins, we end up where we end up. And I had no idea that I was going to aspire to be a chiropractor. I'd thought about it when I was 12, when my best friend's father was a chiropractor. And his name was Dr. Lapika. He was a very gallant man in the community that I lived in, Lake Hughes, California. And everyone was just highly respected this man for what he was and what he did. And so I had that. And he was also a musician, which was kind of interesting, and had that touch into the spirit. I think that music is a connection to your direct connection to your spirit. And that is I think a really important thing. It's kind of interesting. I'm thinking too. Also, many of the athletes that I work with, almost 100% of them are grounded in music and are constantly listening to music. There must be something to it.
Definitely, music is just a wonderful way to connect on the inside, right?
Yeah, and so eventually I switched from music to a pre-med major in my college work, and then that led me to Cal State Los Angeles, where I was a medical technology major. And I participated in sports as well. I was on a track team and also on the tennis team. And the interesting thing that brought me into track, this is a very great story that I remember frequently, how I became involved with track. I ran track when I was in grammar school. I was very good at it, and I took athletics lightly because I was so good at it, so I preferred to do music. But in college, I was sitting in the locker room one day, about ready to go out to tennis practice, and I looked down the way, and there was this Afro-American woman looking very gloomish as she was pedaling through her locker, and had a nice big huge fro, and but she was looking rather down, and so I looked over and I said, "Hey, what's your problem?" Being the precocious thing that I am, and
yes,
she turns my way, and I see this simpako look in her eye. It's this radiating whiteness underneath the blacks of her eyes, and she says, "Well, if you were gonna do what I'm gonna do right now, you'd look this way too." And I said, "Oh, for God's sakes!" I said, "How bad can it be?" And so this incredible woman looks at me and says, "Well, why don't you just come with me, white girl, and see what I do?" And I said, "Okay." I said, "Man, what do I need?" She says, "Get some tennis shoes on." So I followed her out to the track, and it turns out she was the assistant track coach at Cal State Los Angeles.
Wow.
Her name was Jarvis Scott. And it turns out that she's a former Olympian for the '68 Olympic Games of Mexico City. And so from that point further, I joined the track team and became part of the national track team circuit with the Cal State Los Angeles team. And it was an incredible experience. And this woman basically broke me in to what it was to be a professional athlete. I mean, right from the beginning.
Wow.
Took me through all the steps, introduced me to all the top people in the field, and before I knew it, I was traveling with the teams, and I was actually working on them because I had then ventured into the arena of sports medicine. And that happened, another momentous time, when I was going to the men's the men's training room, not the track, but the men's training room, where the head trainer there told me that my shin splints were all in my head and that women really don't get hurt. Oh, man, that just made me furious, of course. And so being the precocious, proactive person that I am, I decided I was going to become an athletic trainer and show him that, women really do hurt and that whatever it is that I could prove my point. But anyway, I got into the 3,000-hour program for professional certified athletic national trainer through this gentleman, Roger Dennis, who was really a gallant trainer, and he of course spurred me on, and I'm glad that he spurred me on with that, statement that he told me that women really don't hurt. You should take an aspirin and go, see a psychologist. So I completed the 3,000-hour program there. I worked with all the teams, the men's and women's teams, the basketball, football teams, and then I received my certification there, and then I established the first women's training room ever at Cal State Los Angeles, and put together all the programming for it, and so that's basically how I got started. And during that time also I worked with the men's professional developmental leagues at Cal State Los Angeles that practice there every summer.
Wow.
Where I met another incredible guy, Del Tanner, who was the Lakers head trainer.
Hold that thought for a second, Dr. Vicky. So I want to come back to one thing, and then we're going to take a short break, and I want you to come back, continue with this story, and I want you to talk us through the next segment about
absolutely.
The 1984 Olympic Games. You have some incredibly inspirational stories there. So we're going to be taking a break here in about 10 seconds. You're listening to Gregory Foster, and this is Access Zen.
And now, let's return to Access Zen.
And we're back live. How's everyone doing? We were, before the break, just talking to Dr. Vicky about some of her influences, and she's going to tell us about that, as well as some unbelievable experiences she had in the 1984 Olympics. So continue, Dr. Vicky.
Hey, Greg. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes.
I was just telling Greg about my experience with the head trainer of the Lakers, Del Tanner, who was at our developmental camp at Cal State Los Angeles. And this was in the 1974, 75, that area. And I was in the training room taping the athletes. Of course, it was our pride and joy as athletic trainers to be able to tape someone's ankle in about a minute and a half or less. And so I taped someone's ankle just up, real swift one day, and did all the figure eights, absolutely no wrinkles, and closed it off. And this gentleman walks over to me and said, "Hey, what do you think you did there?" I said, "I taped someone's ankle, and I taped it good." And he looked at me, smiled, with this cute little smile across his gentle face, because he's just a big, loving guy. And he goes, "Well, you didn't exactly do that." He says, "Let me show you how to do this taping." So I said, "Sure, what the heck?" So he just used a little bit different tape and took his time a little bit more, and he says, "Listen, every time you lay on a piece of tape, you're laying on a piece of tendon, ligament, or something that's structurally supporting this athlete. And it has to be done in the right vector with the right pressure. And if you do that a little more caringly, you're going to be a lot better at what you do." And so, I went through a couple of jobs with him, taping some of the athletes, and, it did feel a lot better. And then later I went on to the training camp, Lakers training camp over at the Forum in Los Angeles, and helped him with things, and actually got the honor of helping them in some stretching programs, and working with Bob Anderson, who came in, who was a stretching expert, still is a great stretching expert, written many books, and so we all worked together in the Lakers preseason training camp. So
you really kind of go back to the classic era, and I just want to come back to a couple things here. One is the attitudes of the era, the late 60s, early 70s, there was, as I recall, there was some racial tension and there was a lot of feelings that women weren't quite at the same level as men. And I think you touched upon that. So that's kind of fascinating. So that must have been something.
That's, a whole other story here, actually, because soon after this time, I had had quite a bit of experience already with track and field. And I was actually approached by the head coach and a few of the coaches at UCLA to apply for the head trainer's job at UCLA. And I did in 76 and unbelievably got the job.
Wow,
so
congratulations.
Here I am sitting with a top trainer's job in the States and just in hog heaven. And there was at that time quite a bit of interesting feelings about women even being in the men's training room at UCLA at that time. And there's another factor, too, which is really...
Women in the locker room.
There you go, women in the locker room. And so we actually did, and I got to work with Ducky Drake, which is just one of the incredible all-time training and athletic heroes for most people in sports that have ever been able to touch Ducky Drake. And he, like what Donna was talking about this morning, was just totally connected to spirit and love and respect. And everyone that walked into his training room, there was absolutely not a word, a four-letter word, ever mentioned in his presence. And before games, he would lead a prayer. I mean, it was just amazing this man's influence on, and the authenticity of him, and it just was incredible. You'd have to have met him, but I did have that honor to work with him, several times and be in his presence, which really helped me with, how I approach things. Where are we at here? Getting back to the training room, and so I was at UCLA for a couple of years, and I had some other really big formative experiences there.
So you were at UCLA during the classic era with John Wooden and Lou Alcindor and putting all those great players into the NBA and into the Lakers. You were just getting your feet wet right around that time.
Yes,
is that right?
And I just remembered what the point that I was getting at here was that women basically had not really been introduced to resistive training and weight training, powerlifting. And it was really interesting because the swim coaches and the gymnastic coaches and tennis coach, quite a few of the team coaches didn't know that women could be complemented with doing power training, powerlifting. Track and field, we were already there. But in regards to like swimming, they thought that if they lifted weights that they would get heavier and they would get slower in the water.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, it was amazing, just absolutely amazing. The lack of good knowledge actually in this area.
And limiting beliefs too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I started doing powerlifting at Cal State Los Angeles under the tutelage of another incredible person, Bob Wieland, who was our strength coach at Cal State Los Angeles. And he was very instrumental in my development as far as my power and strength. And just incidentally, when I was at Cal State Los Angeles, I was approached by the World Arm Wrestling Association to compete in their circuit. And because of my tutelage with Bob Wieland, I was very powerful and strong and fast, and I was using the weightlifting, of course, to do track and field, shot put, and sprints. And so when I got onto the arm wrestling circuit, I immediately became national champion.
Wow, that's amazing.
But the interesting thing about it was I made a huge transition at that time under the tutelage of, again, the Olympic athlete Jarvis Scott, who came to my first competition at Busch Gardens, which was aired by ABC at that time, Wide World of Sports.
Remember that.
On my second trial at arm wrestling within that competition, I was almost beat. And Jarvis pulled me aside and said, "What are you thinking? What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" I says, "I'm competing as hard as I can." She says, "You are not doing anything." She says, "You are not focused. You're not doing the right things that you need to do in order to focus, in order to be anything at this point." She completely humiliated me and brought me down to my knees in regards to, what I felt I was and who I was. So she says, "Okay, this is what we're doing." So we went through the steps of what it is to prepare for an athletic competition. And so every time I went up to the podium again to arm wrestle again, I got stronger and quicker and harder and faster and more determined through the steps that you take. And so it was through these steps that I learned through arm wrestling that I was able to apply myself when I started working with world-class athletes.
Wow,
and it
isn't that
really,
amazing?
really helped to empower me. And so by the time we got to the final, which the world champion at the time arm wrestled, Donna, her name was Donna, I went through her in less than a second. It was just like boom, it was done. And it was interesting. I could feel my momentum start and go and go and go. And so what happened is for the next 3 years, I was the reigning world arm wrestling champion.
I did not know that, Dr. Vic.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I
will promise never to take you on an arm wrestling match.
Well, you see, that's what happened. Then everyone wanted me to come on to their show to arm wrestle them, including, believe it or not, Johnny Carson.
Wow,
so
fantastic.
We went through all these shows and all this great stuff, and then what happened is because of my work at UCLA with women in weight training and doing progressive resistance work and then power training with them in all the sports, believe it or not, Arnold Schwarzenegger did a segment with me. I don't think it was INLA, it was another show. But anyway, it was one of the funnest times I've ever had is working with him, and it was interesting to see all the crews from ABC come, rolling into the parking lot and all the trailers and all the makeup and everything just to do this funny little segment on women in weight training and powerlifting. So, because it was new. It was something that, it was not supposedly the feminine thing to do, and we made it feminine to do because to be powerful and strong is a really beautiful thing.
So, Dr. Vic, walk us through how you went from arm wrestling and working at UCLA and dealing with all these wonderful coaches and athletes. How did you become involved in the track and field for women, and how did that take you into the Summer Olympics? Walk us through that.
All right. Well, in working with UCLA and also at Cal State Los Angeles, I was constantly working with track and field athletes, and many of them were world-class athletes already. And so you get into the groove of knowing the mystique of working with these people. And as a developing athlete as well in track and field for me in arm wrestling, I was able to develop that mystique as well. And so working with the athlete was a natural thing to do and to get into their realm of thought and energy. When you walk into working with an athlete or a group of athletes, you have a certain demeanor that you use, and it's very selfless, and you just open up to the universe so that the innate energy can work through you and to work the knowledge that you have through that athlete.
Yeah, sorry. So when did you become involved in the 84 Olympics specifically? And we're going to take a break in just about 30 seconds here, but I wanted to kind of cue you up so you can tell us about Evelyn Ashford and the 1984 Olympics.
Absolutely. So,
great.
Do we have some more time right now, or?
Yeah, just give us a quick snapshot of how you joined the 84 Olympics, and then we'll go to a break, and you can come back and tell us your inspiring story.
Okay. Well, at this point in time, I'm already a chiropractor. I resigned my position at UCLA in the fall of 1978 to go to chiropractic school. Went through a 4-year postgraduate program in chiropractics because I was stimulated by another gentleman, Dr. Leroy Perry, to go to school and get my professional license and degree. Because of another incident that happened with me working with the UCLA athletes. We never had to have a knee surgery or any surgeries during the time that I was there because I worked with Dr. Perry, and if we had any knee injuries, he would manipulate, and we would have usually a success. So there was never a surgery done to any of the athletes that I worked with in that 2-year period. And so that stimulated me to do that. And then as I became professionally involved with my own practice, I still kept working with all the athletes that I had worked with when I was at UCLA and all my former times. They don't forget you; they keep calling you and asking you for help.
Yeah.
And so,
we're going to have to go to a break here, but when we come back, definitely want to hear the Evelyn Ashford story. I'm Gregory Foster, and this is Access Zen.
And now, let's return to Access Zen.
I'm Gregory Foster, and you're listening to Access Zen, and we're having a compelling story here with Dr. Vicki Vodon telling us about, she was just getting into her experiences in the 1984 Olympics, and I think you were going to tell us briefly about Evelyn Ashford. And just so you know, we've got about 4 minutes left in this segment, and Dr. Vicki, we're definitely going to have you come back because we have a whole lot more for you to tell us.
Oh, listen, the story on the 84 Olympic Games could go on and on, but we had quite a very interesting peril happen. I'd been working with Evelyn since 1976, and in the 84 Olympic Games, she was considered like a top runner, of course, in the world. And in the quarterfinals race, she had actually tore a hamstring muscle. And the coach came walking up to me, Pat Conley, amazing coach in her own right, says, "Vicki, I think we got a problem. Evelyn's torn the medial belly of her hamstring, and let's look it over." So, and of course we take care of the athlete in between each of the races and all the trials. And so it was torn, and she had to run. So we took care of it, and the next day, the following day, we had the semifinal and the final in the same day.
Wow.
So we did all kinds of H-wave therapies. Vacuoscope at the time was really at the top of its peak. And so the next day I devised a taping job, and of course through the help of my knowledge and my work with Del Tanner, the Lakers trainer, I was able to devise something to go from her calf up to her top of her back with elasticon tape, and we taped not only the hamstring, the involved hamstring, but the uninvolved hamstring as well. So we got through the semifinal, and she won the heat. And she said it was pretty much a cruise because the tape actually took the place of the muscles, the fibers of the muscle. So then we had to run again in about another hour. The final was within an hour and a half, and so we came over. She was feeling some pain in the muscle, so we did therapies again, took off the tape, and then we got a call from the staging area at the stadium, at the Coliseum, that she had to be there in 3-4 minutes. And so we jump on the cart. I hadn't finished taping her. I still had to tape the opposite hamstring. And so we actually finished the tape job on the cart on the way over to the Coliseum. And I put on the final wrap as she's walking down through the bottom of the Coliseum on the ramp, and I'm wishing her well. And needless to say, we came out as winners there. She won the gold. It was a good stride and a half ahead of everyone else, and without any pain. So, these taping procedures really, really do work amazingly well.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that is just an incredible story. And as I was mentioning, we're definitely going to have you come back on the show. We got about 2 minutes here. I wanted to spend a little bit of time, and I know there's some folks that may want to call in and ask you some questions. But one of the things that I want to transition from is obviously you've worked with the top athletes in the world. You've worked with some of the greatest coaches in the world. How do you work with folks, regular folks like me, from a supplemental, nutrition, and structural perspective?
Well, it's the same, Greg. Everyone's got muscles and bones, and the functional structure of the body is the most important thing to look at first, because chiropractic is a miracle. I mean, when you relieve subluxations in someone's body, you've just turned the body system on. Like 350 million impulses per second coming from your brain trying to get down to your body if there's subluxations in the way. We need to clear them, because that just opens up the innate knowledge of the body to heal itself. It gives you a lot more energy. And
yes.
then we add nutrition onto that, and then we add, meditation and breath and prayer. Then it all becomes a whole integral, beautiful package. I've got a beautiful program now that I've developed. It's called the Dr. Vodon Health Camp. We have a 5-day fundamental intensive that we're doing in Morongo Valley, California. And it's to put together the symphony that we need to do for personal planning for optimal health. And a lot of people can't put the pieces together. And sometimes it's difficult just in times with people where they're just coming in for their daily treatments and they want to put the whole thing together. So we've put together a really incredible applied fundamental intensive for people to empower themselves. How
do they reach you, Dr. Vicki?
Well, they could reach us on my website, which is www.drvodon.com, and that's just drvodon.com. And they could also reach us at our phone number here, 949-574-9311. And if they're interested in our Applied Fundamental Intensive, our health camp, they can call 949-607-UFIX, and that is 8349.
And you said you fix, as in you fix yourself kind of thing,
right? That's correct.
Right?
You learn how to fix yourself. You empower yourself with knowledge. Knowledge is what we need to empower ourselves and to be well in this incredible time of our lives, and how Western civilization has kind of founded ways to destroy our defense systems. And I think that the knowledge that we have to give here is going to be very helpful for people to know how to stay strong and live their lives to their fullest. In other words, being healthy through every day that they live until, God sees that they need to be somewhere else.
Well, that's just wonderful. We thank you so much for being on the show, and I can definitely testify to our listeners that everything that you've heard from Vicki really works, and I just encourage you to go to her health camp and, again, visit her website. It's got all her information there under the guest profiles, and Dr. Vicki is going to become a regular on the show, so you'll have a chance to ask some questions in the coming months ahead. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Vicki. We look forward to having you on the show again real soon.
Greg, and thank you so much. It's been really awesome this morning with you.
All right. You have a wonderful week.
You too.
Bye-bye. All right, listeners. Well, thank you for being with us on our show. I wanted to let you know that next week is going to be a very special show, and I'm Gregory Foster, and this is Access In, and this is what it's all about. We'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you again for being a part of Access In.